Little Red Riding Hood, adapted from the French of Charles Perrault. Once upon a time, there lived in a small village in the country a little girl, the prettiest and sweetest little creature that ever was seen. Her mother loved her very fondly, and her grandmother doted on her still more. This good woman had made for her a little red hood, which was so becoming to the child that everyone called her Little Red Riding Hood. One day her mother, having made some cheesecakes, said to her, "Go, my child, and see how your grandmother does, for I fear she is ill. Carry her some of these cakes and this little pat of butter." Little Red Riding Hood set out right away with a basket filled with cakes and the pat of butter, to go to her grandmother's house, which was in another village a little way off. As she was going through a wood which lay in her road, she met a large wolf, who had a very great mind to eat her up, but he dared not because of some woodcutters near by in the forest. Yet he spoke to her and asked her where she was going. The poor child, who did not know that it is always dangerous to stand and hear a wolf talk, said to him, "I am going to see my grandmamma, and carry these cakes and this pat of butter from my mamma."
"Does your grandmother live far off?"
asked the wolf. "Oh, yes," answered Little Red Riding Hood. "She lives beyond that mill yonder, in the first house in the village."
"Well," said the wolf, "I'll go and see her too. I'll go this way and you go that way, and we'll see who'll be there first."
The wolf set out as fast as he could run, taking the nearest way, and it was not long before he reached the old woman's house. He knocked at the door. Tap, tap, tap. A voice in the house said, "Who's there?" The wolf replied, speaking as much like Little Red Riding Hood as he could,
"It is your grandchild, Little Red Riding Hood. I have brought you some cheesecakes and a little pat of butter that Mamma sent you."
The good grandmother, who was ill in bed, cried out,
"Pull the bobbin and the latch will go up."
The wolf pulled the bobbin, the door opened, and in he jumped. Presently he caught the good woman and ate her up in a hurry, for it was more than 3 days since he had touched a bit of food. Then he shut the door and climbed into the grandmother's bed, waited for Little Red Riding Hood. She had gone the longest way round, and had stopped to gather nuts, to run after butterflies, and to make nosegays of the little flowers that she found by the way. But shortly after the wolf had got into bed, she reached the house and knocked on the door. Tap, tap.
"Who's there?"
Little Red Riding Hood, hearing the big, rough voice of the wolf, was frightened at first, but then she thought that perhaps her grandmother had a bad cold and was hoarse, so she answered, "'Tis your grandchild, Little Red Riding Hood. Mamma has sent you some cheese and cakes and a little pat of butter." The wolf, softening his voice as much as he could, called to her, "Pull
"Pull the bobbin and the latch will go up."
Little Red Riding Hood pulled the bobbin, the latch went up, and the door opened. When she came into the room, the wolf hid himself under the bedclothes and said to her, in the feeblest voice he could make,
"Put the basket on the stool, my dear, and come to lie down with me."
Little Red Riding Hood, who always did as she was told, undressed herself and got into bed. But the little girl, amazed to see how her grandmother looked in her nightcloth, said, "Dear me, grandmamma, what great arms you have." The wolf replied,
"They're so much better to hug you with, my child."
"Why, grandmamma, what great legs you have got."
"This is to run the better, my child."
"But, grandmamma, what great ears you've got."
This is to hear the better, my child.
But Grandmama, what great eyes you've got!
They are so much better to see with, my child.
Then the little girl, who was now very much frightened, said, Oh, Grandmama, what great teeth you have got!
They are the better to eat you up.
And with these words, the wicked wolf fell upon Little Red Riding Hood and ate her up in a moment. Okay. So apparently this is a story from the French of Charles Perrault. It's found in many countries. Lots of people know Little Red Riding Hood. I don't think I was very consistent with the voices, and I'm not sure I should really be doing voices in these. If you have feedback, feel free to leave it. If you can, depending on where you see this. Thanks for listening.